In order to swing the Senate's decision in exchanging his proconsular province of Macedonia for that of Cisalpine Gaul, Marcus Antonius had needed help. Among those alleged acts of Caesar which Marcus Antonius had handily pushed through the Senate was a bill which expanded the term limits of propraetors and proconsuls. Through previous legislation instituted by Caesar, proconsuls were given term limits of 2 years to govern their provinces, and propraetors were capped at just 1 year. It is likely that Antonius, as part of his scheme to acquire the governorship of Cisalpine Gaul, found it advantageous to revise these term limits in order to extend the period of time for enjoying the prosecutorial immunity which accompanied his proconsular imperium, as well as to prolong his opportunity to dominate Roman politics. But the Senate, upholding Caesar's statutes, supported the late dictator's appointment of Decimus Junius Brutus to Cisalpine Gaul. And Marcus Antonius had recently legislated a term extension for Decimus Brutus's governorship, which would have otherwise expired at the end of 44 BC. Despite his initial dismissal of Caesar's heir, Gaius Octavius, when the inexperienced young man had suddenly shown up in Rome to claim his adoptive father's legacy, Marcus Antonius could not now ignore the immense popularity that Octavius had chalked up following his payout of Caesar's bequest. If the Senate was not prepared to oblige Antonius, he could simply bypass them and take his legislation straight to the people, just as Dolabella had done in order to gain the province previously assigned to Gaius Cassius Longinus, one of Caesar's assassins. But Marcus Antonius's reputation with the people was on shaky ground. Although he seemed to be speaking their language during Caesar's funeral, the Roman people could not forget that Antonius had agreed to a pardon for Caesar's assassins. And though Antonius had for a short time tolerated the new cult of Caesar, which had arisen when the self-proclaimed grandson of Gaius Marius had built an altar to Caesar, Antonius had ultimately cast the man to his death. Antonius had also legislated back into existence the previously dismantled Praetorian cohort as his personal guard, angering the people who objected to 6,000 armed soldiers occupying their city. In his many attempts to keep the mob from slaying the liberators, and Caesar's legions from vengeful slaughter of the Senate, as well as in trying to secure his primacy within the Caesarian party, as his rivals coveted it for themselves, Marcus Antonius had negotiated so many compromises that none of the factions were satisfied. In order for the plebeian assembly to grant him the proconsulship of Cisalpine Gaul, Marcus Antonius's public image needed a facelift. Antonius needed the aid of the young and naive Gaius Octavius. In exchange for his support, which brought with it the support of the plebs, Marcus Antonius promised to return the favor in the future. Because Gaius Octavius despised Decimus Junius Brutus, one of his adoptive father's murderers, even more than he despised Marcus Antonius, Octavius agreed. Through this pact between the two Caesarians, each vying for primacy within the party, Marcus Antonius received his command of Cisalpine Gaul. Not long after, one of the 44 BC tribunes of the plebs died unexpectedly. With his popularity growing among the Roman people and the loyalty of the legions he had raised in Campania, which he engaged as his private guard, Gaius Octavius decided to run for election. The Senate, however, feared Gaius Octavius becoming a tribune of the plebs. It was their expectation that if elected, not a week would pass before the son of Caesar would bring legislation before the mob, naming Rome's liberators as murderers. Once again, Marcus Antonius was forced into a compromise. Despite owing his support to Gaius Octavius in payment for his governorship of Cisalpine Gaul, Marcus Antonius sided with the Senate, afraid that Octavius would use the office to legislate legalized murder at the hands of the vengeful mob. And so, even without the support of Antonius, Gaius Octavius ran for office. Because of his robust popularity with the Roman plebs, he won by a landslide. However, in his capacity as consul to oversee elections, Marcus Antonius nullified the vote and disqualified Gaius Octavius on the grounds that he was not old enough to legally hold the office of tribune of the plebs. Outraged by the duplicity of Antonius, Gaius Octavius sent agents, including Marcus Agrippa, Gaius Salvidianus Rufus, and Gaius Maecenas to the veteran settlements and legion encampments around Italy to rally support for the favoured son of Caesar, and to gauge their discontent with Marcus Antonius. As the 3 legions Antonius had recalled from Macedonia awaited further instructions in Brundisium, Octavius's agents began sowing discord. Marcus Antonius responded by going immediately to Brundisium to take possession of the legions, with his wife Fulvia by his side. In Brundisium, Antonius and Fulvia found nothing but opposition amongst those legions he meant to take to Cisalpine Gaul. In an attempt to bring the legions back under his control, Marcus Antonius executed the legionaries responsible for the dissension. While on his way to Ariminum, the Marcia and 4th Macedonica legions defected and joined the legions of Octavius in the town of Arretium, north of Rome. Having now suffered the loss of 2 of his 5 legions, Antonius desperately needed more men. The legions stationed in Illyricum were available, but were promised to Publius Cornelius Dolabella for his invasion of Parthia. Dolabella, however, could not take possession before January 1st. Suddenly, the Senate received incoming reports that Macedonia was under attack. With the legions pulled out on the orders of Antonius, the Getae launched an invasion of Macedonia. Antonius convinced the Senate to reassign to him the legions of Illyricum in order to defend Macedonia. But after the Senate agreed, the invasion of Macedonia by the Getae stopped abruptly, with random reports coming in that no invasion had ever taken place. Treating these reports as disinformation, Marcus Antonius kept his command of the Illyricum legions and combined them with those still under his authority in Italy. Despite having lost 2 legions to Gaius Octavius, Marcus Antonius's position was now well fortified. In Hispania, Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, whom Antonius felt confident would support him, held 4 legions, and Gaius Asinius Pollio held 3. Lucius Munatius Plancus, the governor of Gallia Comata, controlled another 3 legions. And so, with the legions he still held in Italy, and those from Illyricum now under his control, Marcus Antonius set out for Cisalpine Gaul, leaving Rome on November 28th of the 44 BC year. In Ariminum, where he joined his troops, Antonius sent a demand to Decimus Junius Brutus to vacate the province, but the Caesar-appointed propraetor of Cisalpine Gaul refused, likely reminding Antonius that it was a declaration of war for a general to enter the province of another at the head of an army. Following Decimus Brutus's refusal to surrender the province, Marcus Antonius marched. Decimus, who was campaigning against the local tribes, took up occupation of the town of Mutina, which was well enough supplied to withstand a very long siege. Crossing into Cisalpine Gaul, the legions of Marcus Antonius found no immediate resistance. Out of fear of being sacked, town after town opened their gates to Antonius and his legions, hoping to quickly hurry them through. By mid-December of 44 BC, Marcus Antonius had arrived at Mutina. There, he carried out the investment of the town, using the same tactics Caesar had used to besiege Alesia. Antonius built both a circumvallation and contravallation of walls around the town, with plans to starve out the liberator, Decimus Junius Brutus. Back in Rome, the father of the Republic, Marcus Tullius Cicero, once again appeared in the Senate on December 20th with the third of a series of orations he had written in defense of the Republic. Known as the Philippics, named after a series of speeches used by the Greek orator Demosthenes against Philip II of Macedon. Cicero wrote these speeches in his endeavor to divide the Caesarian party and return power to the Roman Senate. Cicero's second Philippic, written in response to Marcus Antonius's tirade over his first speech on September 2nd, the orator did not deliver. He was advised by his closest friends that Antonius meant to do him harm, and so Cicero did not attend the meeting. In his third Philippic, Cicero urged the Senate to declare Marcus Antonius an enemy of the state, while simultaneously singing the praises of Gaius Octavius. Cicero applauded the legions who had defected from Antonius, lauding them as followers of the Republic and her laws. He also criticized Antonius and his wife Fulvia for their role in the military executions in Brundisium, describing both as having faces spattered with the blood of legionaries. and in keeping with his acclamation of Octavius, Cicero framed his payout of Caesar's bequest as an investment, not in himself, but in the Republic. On January 1st of the 43 BC year, the new consuls, Aulus Hirtius and Gaius Vibius Pansa, took office. Both were Caesarians, but moderate enough in their politics to be swayed by Cicero into believing that Marcus Antonius posed a real threat to the Republic. As the two new consuls began raising legions with which to face Antonius, the Senate also legitimized Gaius Octavius. They awarded the son of Caesar a status equal to that of a former praetor, as well as the right to vote alongside the Senate's consuls. As a pro-praetor with imperium, Caesar Octavianus could now legally command the 4 legions which had been previously referred to as a bodyguard. With legal authority now vested in him by the Senate, Rome's new Caesar marched his legions in support of the new consuls, Hirtius and Pansa, commanding them to relieve the siege of Mutina and take out Marcus Antonius.